Everybody, Invisiblekatana here with my review for Godzilla, King of the Monsters. As the title suggests, there will be spoilers in the second half of this review. Naturally, I'll let you guys know when that's going to happen with a big spoiler warning. But getting right into it, really enjoyed it. Had to wear, the only shirt that I have that's even close to Godzilla is my Grimlock, which is a Transformer for anyone who doesn't know Grimlock somehow. So that's all I had. I was like, I wish I had a Godzilla shirt, but it's like, well, Grimlock is close enough. And yeah, it was a really good movie. It was fun. It was like it was a great popcorn movie. Like, it's probably like a great example of just, it's a cool popcorn movie. If you're a Godzilla fan, I think you'll really love it because you'll be like, oh, that's, like they have the monsters in there. It's like, it's basically the most famous Godzilla monsters are there. So you got Godzilla, Ghidorah. I'm trying to make sure, Mothra's in there. That's in the trailer. And then there's another one that I believe is in the trailer, but I won't say. But they got the big staples in there, which was really sweet. So visually, it was great. Also, I can just say this right off the top: they don't cut away from the action every time there's a fight sequence. It's not like, oh man, and then they cut to something else. You actually see it. You see the fights. They have a fight fairly early on in the movie. Excuse me. I want to say probably within the first 30 minutes or so. It was a pretty decent fight, and then there's little pockets here and there, and the three fights that they have, because there's basically three fights. All three of them are amazing in their own way. Like, every single fight had something great. Like, the first one was like the first fight, so you get to see some stuff that happens. And I'll tell you, man, King Ghidorah was phenomenal in this. Like, I loved everything they did with that, because I was like, it's a three-headed dragon. They do some stuff. It's probably in some of the old movies, but the stuff that happened where I was like, I didn't know Ghidorah had that ability. So that was super sweet, because I was like, well, we get this with Ghidorah, you get that thing with Godzilla. I was like, this is just fun to watch. So the first fight was insane. The second fight was even crazier, and then the final fight was just like bananas, and it was just like, it just got better and better. And I was like, this is good. This is how it should have been in the first movie. But it was great. You get to see Godzilla do his atomic breath, because technically it's not fire. Does his atomic breath more than once, so it's not like in the last movie where it was like at the end of the movie, which was an amazing scene. So you get to see that more than once, which is fantastic. I love the sound design for that as well. The Godzilla, or the original Godzilla theme plays, but it's like a remix version. I was super happy about that. It was like little nerdy. Like, if you like Godzilla, you'll really enjoy this. So I love that. They have some returning characters. It's mostly new people, but they do have a couple of returning characters from the last movie. So I thought that was decent. But all in all, it was just fun. Like, they go through, it's fairly simple. It's a monster movie. Like, they tend to get, well, some of the original Godzilla movies do get a little crazy, but this one I'd say was kind of like mid-tier. It's kind of right in the middle there, where it's like, okay, it's Godzilla. They're basically trying to figure out, how do we get Godzilla to defeat like the main monster, because Godzilla's on our side now. So it's the classic thing where Godzilla starts off as the villain, and then Godzilla comes in as the hero in the sequel. And that's pretty much what the movie is. So we get to see Godzilla do that, and there's just fights throughout. We get to see a bunch of different, we get to see new monsters. Some are actually like given names and stuff like that, but there are a couple that show up that are literally just there, and like they don't actually do anything. So I was like, oh, that would have been cool to see like all of them fight, but technically you don't see every single monster fight. But the ones you do see, you want to see all of them fight just because that would be cool, but you don't feel like you're missing out. It's not like, oh man, if that one fought, it would have been better. Well, technically, I guess it would have been, because it would just been more action. But the way that the scenes are done is so well done for just like giant monster movie action. It's like, okay, I didn't feel like I was unsatisfied, where it's like, oh, but they had these monsters that didn't do anything. It was like, no, that was still great. Like, the action just looks good. The visuals are insane. Like, it just gets better and better. Legitimately, throughout the movie, I think the fights just get better and better. The characters, the human characters, they're fine. Don't really, like, who cares? It's Godzilla. But they do okay. They're fine. They're more likable than in the first movie. I will say that. Because in the first one, it was kind of just like, like they had those elements, and of course the whole thing with Bryan Cranston, everyone was like looking forward to that, and then he dies in the beginning of that movie. Which there's a funny thing that happens at the beginning of this, because I was like, I don't know if I've seen this person in the trailer too much. So there's some stuff where I was like, are they going to do what they did in the first movie? It was kind of funny, like just watching the beginning. I was like, I'm not sure what's about to happen here. But it was really well done how they go through, like kind of showing off the monsters, how they go through the history of the monsters, where they basically are like, we're trying to figure out what this is. And they do a bit of a recap from the first movie, where characters are like, it's all over the news. Like, Titans are a thing now, and people are talking about like the company Monarch, like they know what Titans are, but they won't tell anybody what's going on. So people are freaking out, and it's like, you guys got to tell us what's happening, because they're monsters in the world. So I kind of like that element. They talk about that a bit, and they go through, and as they go on this journey, as Ghidorah wakes up and Mothra and Godzilla is coming back. They get into like some really deep history on the monsters themselves and the history of their battles and things like that. So I thought that was fun. I thought it was really well done, as far as just kind of going through and adding more story. That was actually entertaining. It was like, all right, this is how this started off. This is where it could potentially go. So I like that idea. Like I said, the human characters, they're fine. They have a decent story. I actually like the story of the human characters more in this one than in the last one, but technically it's kind of the same. I won't give it away, but it revolves around family, I'll say that. But that's really it. It's like, okay, it revolves around family. It's definitely more entertaining than in the first movie because it's much more dynamic as far as like what's happening with the characters and what they have to do or what they choose to do, things like that. So it's more entertaining. Might not necessarily make the most sense 100%, but it's just like at some point I'm just like, sure, whatever. Like, I just kind of got past it. So some of the stuff was just all right. It was mostly on like the villain side of things. Like there's very specific stuff that happens, or it's just like, but why? That's kind of just crazy to think that. It's just those crazy things where people say like, I'm doing it for this reason. And it's like, well, that reason's insane. That just doesn't really make that much sense for you to do that and be shocked when something else happens, or this thing happens or that thing happens, and you're like, oh, I didn't see that one coming. It's like, you didn't see that with the giant monsters. Okay. So some stuff was just like, meh, it just doesn't make sense. It's like a natural plan, especially for like a genius. So it's just like, oh, that's kind of dumb. But other than that, it was like everyone else was doing smart stuff. It was like really like one character. It was kind of the catalyst for some of the things that happened, where it's like, it just doesn't really connect 100%. But also, I didn't really care that much. So I was like, whatever, because I'm waiting for Godzilla to fight or breathe atomic breath, and it works. Every time that happens, it's like, okay, cool. And you also get to see Godzilla a lot more than in the last movie, I feel. All different angles, like in the water, out of the water, in the air. He doesn't fly, but there are reasons Godzilla might be in the air in this movie, if you've seen the other creatures. And it's pretty cool. Like from all angles, like Godzilla just looks sweet. And I think they changed the design a little bit. And there's some stuff that happens throughout the movie that changes the look of the character. Specifically at the very end of the movie, they do something that I thought was so cool. I was like, I did not expect them to do this, but it looked great. So I was happy about that. And I'm excited for them going forward, because I'm pretty sure the next movie is supposed to be King Kong versus Godzilla. So I'm definitely looking forward to that, which I believe is actually supposed to be out next year. I think they did this one and then it's supposed to be out next year, or maybe like 2022 or something like that. It would be sweet if it was next year, but it's probably like 2022. That makes more sense. But this is a good movie. I recommend it. I don't think it's gonna like really blow anybody away as far as like, holy crap, it's like the best movie ever. But if you're going into it like, I want to see Godzilla, if you enjoyed the last one, you'll really enjoy this one, because it's way better than the last movie. Like all the action that we got that was really cool at the end of the first movie, where it's like Godzilla's fighting two monsters. It's like every single fight scene, even if he's fighting just one monster, it just looks better than it was in that last movie, or it's at least on that same level. So like the end fight of the last movie is what you get for every single fight in this one. And there's 3 big fights. It's basically like Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3 fight. And they're all fantastic. And they're all varied too. They're all very different. They take place in totally different locales. So a lot of different stuff happens. Like you see really interesting things play out every single battle. Like some weird, unique thing ends up taking place. So I love the way they did that, because it helped kind of keep the pace. Even though it's fun to kind of just watch them run at each other and bite each other and, breathe fire or whatever. The way that they change it, like each one is, you got the first fight was probably the most basic, really, and then the second one gets crazy, adding in some aerial tricks, and then the third one gets insane, where it's just like, absolute chaos, and it's just like the final push. So every single stop is coming out from these monsters, and it's really entertaining. So I enjoyed it for that. Feel like there's not much else I can really talk about without getting into spoilers, so I'd say check it out if you haven't seen the movie already. Of course, if you have, I'm about to get into spoilers, and if you have not, go check out the movie, then come back and let me know your thoughts on it. But getting right into the official spoiler section of this movie, or this review for the movie, I'm going to start with what I didn't like, and that was, which I wish I could remember any character's name. I don't. Oddly enough, I remember Andrew, and he's the dead one. That was really dark. But that's it. And I want to say their daughter's name is like Melinda, which is totally wrong. It starts with an M, I think. Melissa, that might be it. It doesn't even matter. Vera Farmiga's character, though, her not realizing that things might go wrong, I thought was really dumb because it was like, I have to, like first it starts off seemingly she's captured, but then it turns out that she was actually working with the guy that kidnaps her and everything, and so it's like, all right, their plan was to wake up the monsters one at a time to kind of bring balance, pretty much, and then it was like, oh, look at that, you didn't do your research, and you bring out King Ghidorah, who they reveal is an alien, and then things just get crazy chaotic because it's like, all right, guys, destroy the world, and so it just goes wrong, and it was like, that was kind of dumb. That was a dumb plan. That didn't really make a lot of sense, and especially because of the reasoning where like they have the argument where it's like, this won't bring him back to us. It was just like, her reasoning for that. It was almost like, I'm doing this so he didn't die in vain, and I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Like, it's one thing to talk about balance and stuff like that, and I guess they just didn't do the research. Like, they weren't as smart as they thought, where they bring out Ghidorah, which was funny that was the first one they brought out, and then it was just like, oh crap, that screwed up the whole plan. It was like, you didn't do like any research on what Ghidorah may or may not have done, like anything like that. So it was kind of surprising. The first monster that they let free, and they're like, oh, this isn't working, this isn't right, we didn't do this. So it was just kind of funny. It was like, they just didn't know what the F they were doing, really, and the reasoning for it, I just didn't think was good. It was like, it was just a weird way, like even Millie Bobby Brown's character, she says the same thing, like, do you really think this is what Andrew would have wanted? So it's one of those things where you're just like, this is just dumb, it doesn't make sense, this isn't like, it just made her crazy. It was like a weird way to do it, where it's like, he died, but if we do it this way, then it'll be like a balance, and like people won't die in catastrophic events, they'll die like in natural events or whatever. So it was just weird because it was like, all you're doing is killing more people. That's legitimately all that would have happened, even if it went exactly according to plan. If they did it like one at a time, it still would have been a bunch of people would die because they would be coming out like they did with Rodan. It was like, all right, well, here's Rodan flying across the city. People were just getting caught up in a gust and like flying out into the sky and stuff like that. It's like, all you're doing is just killing people. And it just didn't make a ton of sense. It works at the end because, of course, they defeat like the main monster, and Godzilla is a good guy. But all the other monsters were just gonna go buck wild, which they of course end up doing because Ghidorah comes in. So it was just interesting. That was like the one thing where I was like, I just feel like not much is happening with her actual character. It was just a weird way to go about it. But it did lead to an entertaining movie. So I was just like, whatever. This is kind of weird, and it doesn't really make sense that that's why she went down that path. But it's just one of those weird, crazy things where it's like, your reasoning for doing this doesn't really match up too well. It's just like a weird excuse you came up with to do it. So that was like the one thing. It just didn't feel like cohesive, like her reasoning and then her reaction to, what happened to her. It's like, that just didn't seem like it really fit together and made a ton of sense, because you're not saving people, you're just killing a ton of people at random. So I was like, okay, whatever. Other than that, I thought it was good. Ken Watanabe's character sacrificing himself to like help Godzilla out, I thought that was cool. And he was like the one connection to the last movie outside of the general or whatever. I can't remember what the rank was, but I didn't think he'd be in it either. And he pops up like, hey, we have this thing that's the oxygen destroyer or whatever. Which I believe was a reference to the original. Like, I heard somebody talking about it when I was leaving the theater about like some of the older Godzilla movies. So I think that was actually a reference to some older Godzilla stuff. So that's cool. But those are like the only two characters that popped up, and it was like, okay, they're going along doing their thing. He has to sacrifice himself. It's the emotional beat of the movie. We get to see like the crazy super ancient temples and stuff, and they have Godzilla versus Ghidorah from like centuries and centuries ago. So that was kind of cool to be like, they've fought throughout time, and then they the stuff they do with Mothra where she's like the queen and Godzilla's the king. So I thought that was cool because that was something that I'd never really seen from any of the other Godzilla movies before. So I like that idea. It sucked that Mothra died at the end, because I was like, man, I kind of hope they don't kill Mothra, but they did, sadly. But Ghidorah was awesome, shooting lightning. I did not know Ghidorah could shoot lightning, so that was awesome, because I was like, I thought it was going to be fire. And then it was funny, when it was charging, I was like, I don't think this is going to be fire. Like, because it was yellow, and I was just looking around, I was like, I don't think this will be fire. And it, like, lightning came out, and I was like, that is so freaking sweet. Like, it was arguably cooler than blue atomic fire. But I was like, that looks so cool, and it's just like vaporizing people, here and there throughout the movie. The ending was amazing when it like bites the power generators and it just like shoots lightning out of like every like tip on his wings and stuff, and like destroys like all the ships in the air. I love that scene. I was like, visually, that's nuts. And I was like, wow, how can it get cooler than that specific shot? And there's a lot of shots. That was actually something I wish I talked about in the first part. There are so many shots in this movie where I was like, I wish I could just get a quick little shot of that. Like Godzilla at the very end, when all the monsters are around him, that was a fantastic shot. Ghidorah, like shooting out the lightning in all angles, that was a great shot. I believe there was one during the second fight when they're in the air. There was like a specific scene I remember something happened, and I was like, that would be a cool like just still photo. But I feel like every single fight had that moment. Like probably when Ghidorah like first shoots lightning, that was probably visually that was just a cool thing. It wasn't as picturesque, but there are a lot of shots where they do like really big wide shots, and I was like, they did that on purpose. Like that's just good cinematography. It just looked like you pause right here, that's a cool still. So they did that a lot throughout the movie, and it wasn't just action sequences, but typically it did revolve around the monsters either moving or in for the most part fighting. But I love the way it looked. Visually, like some of the shots were just like, I want to picture that so bad because it looks good. But really enjoyed the movie. I feel like there really isn't that much to talk about spoiler wise outside of one character dies. Well, technically two, because Vera Farmiga's character does end up dying when she drives off, which is another weird thing. But at the same time, that at least made more sense than like her ultimate plan, because I was like, okay, she drove the thing away because Ghidorah would have to chase her around, and then that will allow for Godzilla to have even more time to actually recover. And so I was like, okay, at least this time it makes a bit of sense. It was kind of crazy. I wasn't expecting that, like the whole movie, and then she sacrificed herself. I still thought it was weird. As much sense as it made, I still thought like that's just a weird thing for them to do at the very end, where she's like, they're together through this whole thing, and then it's like, sorry, and she takes the thing and then drives in the truck, and I was just like, that is weird to me. So that was another weird little thing at the end where I was like, it kind of makes sense, but also weird. Also weird. But it is what it is. And then, she ends up dying. And it was funny. I forgot about Godzilla going, like, atomic. So when the truck crashed and she was on the ground, I was like, oh, she's fine. She'll be good. I forgot about the atomic thing. And then he comes in, and I was like, oh, yeah, the radiation stuff. No, she's not going to make it. And then, of course, he screams. Or like, he doesn't even scream. He just, like, amps up, and then just a seismic wave like blasts Ghidorah's wings off, which was a great visual scene as well, like the wings just burning away. And like as soon as that happened, I was like, yeah, she's dead now. She's that killed her right there. And then the second blast hits and it burns the two faces off, which I thought was super cool. But man, the visuals for that was good. I was hoping that scene would last a little bit longer, because when they show Godzilla just walking and stuff starts melting, I was like, I want to see this fight. But it was just the two big blasts, which were still really sweet. But I was like, I kind of want to see Godzilla like swing, and literally like buildings are melting before Godzilla can like even touch a building. Like they just melt away, and it's like lava as it like punches Ghidorah. I would have loved to have seen that and just see like chunks of lava like flying and stuff. But it was super cool, and like just burns the two heads away. And then like just steps on the stomach, lightning shoots out, and Godzilla overloads, and just the giant blast. And then you see Ghidorah's like head, and I was like, oh, the battle isn't over, so this will be cool. And then it ends up being Godzilla has the last head in his mouth, and he just shoots the beam straight up in there, and I was like, that looks so cool. So that I loved. Like it was just great at the end. Mothra fighting Rodan. I thought Godzilla was gonna kill Rodan at the end there, because it was like, you killed the queen, and I gotta punish you. I thought that's what was about to happen, because he made that face, but then Rodan was like, my bad, my bad. But I love that scene. Like it was a really great final action sequence. The beginning was super cool. Like the first action sequence was great. All three of them were good. Like it was just fun to watch, like all the way through. And Ghidorah being like this moving storm, just that was really sweet. Like when they were in DC and they first show it, like everything's destroyed, and it's just like this storm with multiple tornadoes and like lightning strikes. I was like, the visuals in this movie were so well done. So I love that, especially for Ghidorah being like a living, lightning storm. I thought that was great. So I love the way they handled that. Love the little teaser going into King Kong versus Godzilla, like what's a Kong to a god and stuff like that. So, or what's a king to a god, stuff like that. So I was excited. I was kind of hoping, I was curious. I was like, I wonder if they would just flat out put King Kong in this movie for like just a little bit. If King Kong would like fight against or fight with Godzilla, and then in the next movie, King Kong would be even older, so he'd be bigger, and it's like, all right, I'm bigger. I'm about as big as you, or even bigger now. It's time for me to be the king. So I was curious how that was gonna end up playing out, because I was like, that would be awesome if they did do that and King Kong was actually in it, helping in this movie, and then they become enemies in the next one. A nice little twist on like every versus thing ever, where they fight first and then it's like, oh, we're all good guys. That would have been really cool, but it also he would have had to like swim across the water and stuff. But they were all across the world, and I can't remember exactly where they ended in DC, but I can't remember where the other monsters were. I guess they were all technically in the States, so that's why they showed up there. But I thought it was cool, and I'm definitely excited for whatever is going to end up happening with King Kong versus Godzilla. And for anyone who didn't watch, and I should have mentioned this as well, there was a post-credit scene. So if you want that to be spoiled, I will spoil it now. Nothing really happens in it. It's very simple, but I'm very curious what they could do with it. It was the guy that was working with Vera Farmiga's character. He shows up, and they're in Isla de Mara again, and they have one of King Ghidorah's heads. And so, like, they go into this facility and stuff, and it's like a severed head, and it's like, we'll take it. Like, they buy it from some people. So I don't know what they're going to end up doing with that, but considering the whole regenerative property of, like, this alien three-headed dragon, they could bring back Ghidorah, or they'll just make another type of dragon or something like that. So I'm curious what they'll end up doing. That I would assume would be, after King Kong versus Godzilla. But either way, I was like, that's kind of cool. I'm excited to see what they end up doing with that. That would probably be like flat out Godzilla 3. Because I don't think either of them are going to die. Because I think they're supposed to do another King Kong movie. Could be wrong about that. But who the F knows? Either way, they're doing something with the post-credit sequence. They're going to either redo Ghidorah, or they're going to make, like I said, a new dragon character. Or something else that can shoot lightning. Hopefully, because that just looks cool. But enjoyed the movie. Thought it was decent. Didn't think it was like, bombastic or anything like that. I enjoyed seeing it. I might see it again. I'm not like super amped to see it again. But I'll definitely be checking out the action sequences once people like start buying it and just uploading the fight scenes to YouTube. I will definitely watch those on my TV because those look good. But yeah, I enjoyed the movie, of course. Would love to know what you guys thought about it. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, least favorite parts about it. With them going forward with King Kong versus Godzilla, what do you guys want to see from that? What do you wish we got to see from this movie? What do you, as far as the monsters go, do you think they got proper representation, as at least as far as the really big ones? What else would you guys like to see in this weird franchise? I guess technically it's a universe. Everybody's doing a cinematic universe now, so I guess it's the cinematic universe of the monsters. So what do you guys want to see with them going forward? They have the other monsters. I don't know if they'll get into another fight. They did have a sign, by the way, in the beginning of the movie when they were showing like the rallies and this and that. There's a sign that said like "Destroy all monsters." I was like, oh, that's a cool reference. So I like that. So I don't know if they're gonna get to that point where it's like it's everyone actually fighting everyone, because that's what I was hoping for in this movie. Clearly not as much utter chaos. But still, like I said, it was really enjoyable. So I wouldn't mind seeing that if things just got really crazy and like everyone was just fighting against Godzilla again. That would be pretty cool, especially if that took place after King Kong versus Godzilla, and like Kong was like, well, what if we just take over and then we do whatever we want instead of obeying the rules, talking in whatever language they could, I guess, and then that's how everyone ends up fighting Godzilla. I think that would be fun. Who knows? But either way, like I said, I definitely want to know what you guys thought about the movie. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.